Cheers and applause from a crowd of supporters who stood outside the courthouse in solidarity with State Rep Attica Scott.
They are trying to have power, domination, and control over our bodies and our voices, and we will not allow it. As my daughter Ashanti, who was arrested with us, often says, we do not move in fear. No. So these charges will not stop us. It will not stop the revolution.
Today we're joined with Kentucky State Legislature Representative Attica Scott. She represents Louisville and the Louisville metro area, and she's joining us today from Louisville. Representative Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. I appreciate you.
Well, first, there's a lot going on. We spoke with you a couple of weeks ago after Attorney General Daniel Cameron made the announcement that no police officers would face any criminal charges directly relating to Breonna Taylor's murder. And subsequent to that, people justifiably, righteously took to the streets to demand justice for Breonna and changes with the way that the criminal justice system and the police operate there in Louisville. So let's start with this latest development. As I mentioned, reporting by Tessa Duvall from the Courier-Journal, she did report on Friday that Daniel Cameron's office is trying to stay a judge's order granting an anonymous grand juror's right to speak out about the proceedings in the Breonna Taylor case. Now, this is a bit of switchery by the Attorney General because he did agree, after a judge's order, I believe, compelled him to do so, to release some of the grand jury transcripts, which detailed some of the information that was presented to the grand jury that led to a lack of charges directly pertaining to Breonna's case. What is the latest of this as you understand it?
Well, it's obvious, Kim, that the Attorney General is an utter and complete failure. When you have two grand jurors who want to speak publicly about him failing to present them with all of the options in front of him, it says to me that he has failed miserably in seeking justice for Breonna Taylor, that instead he has been an agent of the police and trying to protect the police. The fact that he wants a stay on a judge's order says to me that he has something to hide. And I believe we should all be concerned about that.
You know, Tessa Duvall, relying a little heavily here on Ms. Duvall's reporting, she went on to say—
She's good people.
Oh, good to know. She went on to report via her Twitter account that the grand juror wants to speak freely about how Daniel Cameron's office handled the Breonna Taylor case, including evidence, witnesses, charging options that might have been presented to jurors. Now, Daniel Cameron still insists that grand jurors knew their rights. Part of the transcript in which Ms. Duvall also reports here, for example, one piece of evidence that the grand jury requested to see was body cam footage from that night. And apparently, Daniel Cameron was reluctant to show the entire spate of footage. And one grand juror was reported to have said that, you know, we got time. You know, they were apparently very interested and engaged in wanting to see this evidence. And it definitely seemed as though the Attorney General had his thumb on the scale of whether or not these police would be charged. I know you know Tamika Mallory, right? Tamika Mallory was in your city around the time of the initial announcement of no charges. And she gave a very stirring speech. But one thing that she read when she was, speaking to protesters was an excerpt from Daniel Cameron's speech that he gave, I believe, when he was seeking office to a fraternal order of police.
It says, "It is a great honor to receive the endorsement of the bipartisan Kentucky Fraternal Order of Police. To the men and women in blue, I pledge to be your advocate and your voice every day. When I first got into this race, I did so to bring focus to the public safety challenge of our lifetime, the drug crisis. And there is so much work to be done to fight this epidemic. I am humbled to have this endorsement, and as a chief law enforcement officer in Kentucky, I will work every day to make our communities safer and our families and citizens more secure." Half of that statement is from Daniel Cameron. when he received the endorsement of the FOP, one of the most racist organizations that exist in America. I got time today.
When an attorney general makes a pledge to police, what are the chances that someone like Breonna Taylor, like someone like yourself, like someone who may have a negative, like the family of David McAtee, what are the likelihood that they're going to get justice when the attorney general has already pledged that he stands with cops? Where does that leave the Black community in Louisville?
We're very clear that he pledged his allegiance to law enforcement. We're very clear about that he had no intentions in serving in office and defending the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Instead, he was committed to defending the people who endorsed him, the Fraternal Order of Police. So that's why many of us were disappointed, but not surprised by his decision. And his decision was clear. He decided he would not be seeking justice for Breonna Taylor and that he never had any intention to do so.
Representative Scott, you have been on the ground, on the front lines, trying to advocate for justice for Breonna's family. In addition to being out on the streets, you introduced Breonna's law to the state legislature, a law that addresses many pieces of reform for the police in your state and in your city. But I wanted to talk about what happened to you recently when the charges were announced, where one officer would be charged with wanton endangerment, but no officers charged with Breonna's murder. People, Louisvillians, I'm not sure what they call people from Louisville. What do you call people from Louisville? Tell me real quick.
You got it, Kim. Louisvillians.
Oh, nice. Okay, Louisvillians. Yes, took to the streets righteously, justifiably so, to say that this was not good enough. This was wrong. This system needs to change and do better for Breonna. And you were filming on IG Live as you and a bunch of protesters were headed to a designated safe space. I think it was the Unitarian Church.
I want y'all to know they want to kill us. We're 4th and York. They want to kill us. We're 4th and York. We were trying to go inside, so they're setting us up.
Pull your hands like a knife. Hold your fingers out. There you go. Hey.
They're setting us up. We were going inside. They were setting us up, just so y'all know as you're watching. 4th and York.
So as you're seeing police beginning to surround you, can you please tell us what was happening in those moments before you were taken into custody? What were you doing? What were other protesters doing? And more importantly, what were the police doing and how were they handling and dealing with the crowd?
Thank you so much, Kim, for asking about that. It was an extremely traumatic experience, and many of us are still carrying the emotional and mental scars from that experience. We were walking to the church in my district, District 41, the district that I represent and serve, and we were going for sanctuary and service. Now, please keep in mind that just earlier that week, the mayor had asked houses of worship to be open to people who were needing solace and comfort after the decision, and that's what we were seeking. We were, first of all, police blocked us in to a parking lot. We couldn't get out. They put their armored vehicles in front of the exit and then a concrete block in front of the second exit. So they blocked us in. So we had to get out and walk to the church. It was only 3 blocks away. So we thought we were going to make it. It was before sanctuary. We walked past the library that we were accused of trying to burn down. Again, the library in the district that I serve, I'm one of its biggest champions. We were literally 100 feet from the church. Across the street, we could see it, we could almost touch it. And police yelled at us to turn around. And at the same time they yelled at us to turn around, Kim, I was confused because they started yelling, circle him, circle him. So I'm on the recording asking, what do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go? And then they pointed their guns in our faces, told us to sit down. And that's when they started tying our arms behind our backs, our wrists behind our backs with zip ties. Sat us on the sidewalk for nearly an hour. And when I asked what was happening, they refused, Kim. They would not tell me why we were being arrested. People in community and people across this country knew why we were being arrested before we did.
When you recounted that, I swear I just had a bad chill go down my spine. I mean, that sounds terrifying. And I know that you were with your daughter, and I know that the both of you, I believe, were charged criminally. And there's been some movement on that regard as well. You had felony charges. I think you were charged with felony rioting, of all things. Do you think the state legislature is out there what did they think you were doing? Busting up windows at the library? Like, I'm very confused. I'm like, why did they charge her with rioting? Like, what in the world? Describe to us what you were charged with and what has happened with your charges.
They charged us. They claimed we were trying to burn down the library. I mean, I was so confused. But I will say, Kim, I am also eternally grateful that within hours, before we were even released, the library's union, AFSCME, put out the most powerful statement to say we denounce these charges against Representative Scott. She would never do something like this. She has been our biggest advocate fighting for funding for us at the state level, has shown up and supported programs here. So, I will say, Kim, you got chills when I was sharing with you. My daughter and I, and everybody who was in with us, not one of us dropped a tear while we were being arrested or the 10 hours that we spent incarcerated. When I left that exit lobby and somebody showed me that statement, I lost it. Because to me, it's the people that matter. And when the people, the labor union members who work at that library said this is impossible, that I lost it. I was like, wow, thank you all so much for believing in me. But I will say that I was terrified for my daughter and her safety because I know how violent police can be. So I was less concerned about my safety and I was more concerned about her. Just because we know the police murdered Breonna Taylor. So none of us were exempt from their violence. And I think it's important, Kim, for people to know that Brett Hankinson, the person who was arrested for shooting into Breonna's neighbor's apartment, spent 32 minutes in jail. We spent 10 hours in jail for fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor.
Representative Scott, I mean, for one, the people knew you was not out there rioting. So let me just say that first and foremostly. But the fact that you're still facing misdemeanor charges, is this Daniel Cameron's office that is pursuing charges against you? And I hope that these charges get dropped. They shouldn't have been brought in the first place. But is this his office doing this?
It's not Daniel Cameron's office. It's County Attorney Mike O'Connell here in Louisville. And yes, he was pursuing, well, the police arrested us and gave us these charges. And so I just give credit to the people across Louisville, across Kentucky, and across this country who contacted his office. Kim, on the first night, so many people called the phone line that it shut down the phone. And the night before we were arraigned this week, so many people emailed his office that it broke the link on the contact form to say, drop these charges, these absurd charges on all of the protesters. And so, yes, the county attorney did drop the felony charges against us, but we do still have the 2 misdemeanor charges, and we go to court November 16th to fight those charges as well. So we're going to be calling on people to do the same thing. Contact County Attorney Mike O'Connell and tell him to drop all those misdemeanor charges against the protesters.
Representative Scott, when we spoke last, we talked about what happens next. Where does this movement in Louisville and really nationally, but Louisville specifically right now, what happens next? And when we spoke last, you talked to me about how the work was moving from protest to policy. What's on the ballot for Kentuckians and Louisvillians coming up in these next couple of weeks as we are so close to Election Day? What are some of the things that people need to be aware of that is available for Kentuckians to vote upon that are definitely important? It could be transformational or it could be changing policy for the good that people need to know that this is important that you vote on this.
That is such a good question, Kim. One of the issues that's a ballot amendment issue is around extending the terms of service for district court judges and the Commonwealth's attorney. So it's so important for people in Kentucky to understand that we have the opportunity to either say, yes, we want these folks to serve even longer terms in office, or no, we don't, because we want to make sure we can hold them accountable. And that's important because we know as activists and leaders that Judge Mary Shaw, who signed these death search warrants for Breonna Taylor, has got to go. We also know that we've got to make sure that no district court judge, no Commonwealth's attorney gets to serve 8 years when that means we have 8 years before we can truly hold them accountable.
And lastly, Representative Scott, before we let you go, it's important that multiple aspects of the work be happening at the same time. And there's lots of people out there who believe that the system is broken and it needs to be dismantled, and there's work happening there. But for people like yourself who are elected officials, who are, drafting and writing legislation and who are working within the system, talk to us about where that work stands for you, particularly what is the status of Breonna's law, and what is the likelihood that you can get the legislature and eventually, hopefully, the governor to sign it and make it law?
So Breonna's law for Kentucky is something that I worked on with her family's attorney, Sam Aguiar, and with the ACLU of Kentucky, in particular, Couture Heron, who helped to get Breonna's law unanimously passed here in Louisville. So, it's something that I'm hopeful about because it comes from the people, it comes from community, and it's a piece of legislation that folks are owning, that they feel like they are a part of. I mean, we have 4,000 people who have signed on as community co-sponsors of the law. And so, Kim, just very quickly, what the bill would do is it would say that we're ending no-knock search warrants across Kentucky. So no more no-knocks across Kentucky. It would also mandate that officers who are involved in deadly shootings and other violent incidences must comply with alcohol and drug testing. And it also states that when issuing or serving a warrant, that 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after, police must have on and turn on their body-worn cameras. So that's Breonna's law for Kentucky. I have already written to the Speaker of the House to ask for a hearing this year before the regular session convenes so that we can have the conversation we need to have around it. And because of the people of Kentucky, I'm confident that the bill will be heard in committee when we come back in January 2021. And the people are going to have to continue their advocacy so that the bill will pass. And of course, we're going to have to apply pressure to the governor so that he signs Breonna's law so that her name will forever be etched in Kentucky's revised statutes.
That's incredible. I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've been speaking with the only Black woman who is elected to the Kentucky State Legislature, Representative Attica Scott. She represents Louisville and the surrounding area. She is a freedom fighter. She puts her body on the line, and she's going to work every day. I'm not going to talk too bad about your colleagues in the State House, but I can only imagine what you have experienced while working on behalf of your people in the Kentucky State Legislature. So I salute you. We thank you so much. And anything that we can do to amplify anything that you're doing, please let us know. We would love to have you back on anytime.
Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate you.